Story 1. Bill Cosby produced a significant amount of quality television. He appeared on the Electric Company on public broadcasting service in the early 1970s, teaching children to read. He then produced Fat Albert, a Saturday morning cartoon with strong values. Next, he produced and starred in The Cosby Show, one of the great family sitcoms of all time, which provided excellent role models. He produced the spin-off A Different World, inspiring many African Americans to pursue higher education. He also created the children's cartoon Little Bill. Additionally, he was a talented comedian and starred in numerous other projects. If you were born in the 1970s or 1980s, your entire life was influenced by Bill Cosby's shows. However, all of that vast legacy was tarnished by his actions against many women. Story 2. Azealia Banks. She could have been a legend in the female rap world if she had just kept her thoughts to herself on social media. Story 3. Picasso. There are many painters known for their questionable character, but I will mention Picasso because he was a highly regarded talented artist while also being difficult toward many women in his life. Story 4. Funny that all of the answers are actors and singers, yet there is an endless list of extremely talented individuals in sports who have also been involved in serious controversies. In the National Football League alone, Jim Brown, considered the greatest running back of all time by many, is a known domestic abuser. Antonio Brown, one of the most troubled individuals, also happened to be one of the greatest receivers in the league. Ben Roethlisberger is likely to be inducted into the Hall of Fame despite being a convicted rapist. Current players like Tyreek Hill and Deshaun Watson are too talented to face any significant consequences for their troubling actions. The list goes on. Story 5. Chris Brown can sing and dance his heart out, but you already know how much of a scumbag he is. Story 6. All of the pastors who preach the prosperity gospel are talented manipulators. Most are purely unscrupulous individuals. My personal story with this involves Joel and Victoria Osteen. When Victoria was being sued by an airline stewardess for an incident during a flight, they came into my fine dining restaurant every day during the trial. One day, the mayor of Houston joined them and their attorneys, and he asked if he could say the blessing before they ate. It was the only time grace was said during the week they visited. All of the staff began referring to Joel as the false prophet from that point forward. Though his father, John, was genuinely a good person for the community, it is a shame that his son has tarnished that reputation. Story 7. Chevy Chase is, in my opinion, hugely funny and one of the best parts of anything he is in. However, he is known to have been difficult to work with. Story 8. I haven't seen anyone mention John Jones. He sure seems like an unpleasant person, but he is one of the most entertaining mixed martial arts fighters. Story 9. I recently learned that Justin Sane from Anti-Flag turned out to be a serial statutory rapist. I loved their music, particularly after the events of September 11th and the invasion of Iraq, because I didn't want war, but I was 13 and couldn't vote. Story 10. Everyone here is thinking too small. Henry Kissinger was a brilliant political mastermind who probably engineered more death and human suffering over the course of his career than the Nazis who killed his relatives, and did so with such confidence that former presidents still praise his role as a peacekeeper. Story 11. H.P. Lovecraft was a remarkable writer who contributed to the Cthulhu mythos. However, his racism was extreme even for his time. He wrote a poem that included a racial slur, and many of his stories expressed negative attitudes toward black and mixed-race individuals. Lovecraft held white supremacist views, claiming that only people of Anglo backgrounds had value. Additionally, I acknowledge his cat. Story 12. Floyd Mayweather is arguably the most talented boxer ever. A deep dive into his career reveals significant aspects of his personality and public perception. Story 13. I can't stand Danny Masterson, but that 70s show will always be one of my top go-to comfort TV shows. Story 14. There was a salesperson I used to work with. He was the know-it-all type who had to jump in and correct everyone on everything all the time. The most annoying thing was that he almost always knew what he was talking about. The fact that he was usually right made it even worse. Story 15. Adam Levine. I recently heard him sing The Way You Look Tonight. It was amazing, and I discovered he doesn't have to use that Maroon 5 singing voice all the time. Story 16. Roald Dahl had an incredible and unique imagination. To my knowledge, there has never been anyone like him since, but he held racist views. Story 17. Richard Wagner is the first person that comes to my mind. He was an amazing composer who had a significant impact on both classical and modern music. However, he was also an outspoken anti-Semite and exhibited arrogant and eccentric behavior. Additionally, his family later became friends with Adolf Hitler, although that is not entirely his responsibility. Story 18. Van Morrison is a supremely talented songwriter, but generally not very pleasant to interact with. There are two kinds of people, those who like Van Morrison and those who have met him. Story 19. I am surprised I haven't seen Stanley Kubrick yet. He made great movies, but he treated the actors poorly for the sake of art. Story 20. I have been a huge fan of the Smashing Pumpkins since I discovered them around the year 2000. Disarm is the song that got me into rock music, and Adore is in my top 5 albums ever. Billy Corgan is a selfish, malevolent individual. The worst thing that happened to him was achieving his level of success due to an ungodly level of self-belief. The whole world loved grunge. Somehow, Corgan broke through with angry psychedelic rock and a voice that sounded like a sad toddler with the flu, along with a band of highly dysfunctional people who either hated or loved each other, often to an unhealthy extent. The only one who liked him was the drummer, Jimmy, who also struggled with a heroin addiction for years. He made a highly acclaimed album almost single-handedly, then pressured his record company into allowing him to release a double album as their third studio effort, which went on to be an incredible success. Not only that, but he essentially tricked them into releasing the album his way or face losing hundreds of thousands of dollars. He then released a downbeat electronic album with a drum machine that sold poorly but is retrospectively viewed as ahead of its time and a genuine classic by many. In between all that, he went bald, got divorced, his bassist became addicted to crack, his keyboardist died of a heroin overdose, his drummer almost faced the same fate, his mother died, and oh yes, he took fistfuls of ecstasy and had a relationship with Courtney Love. He is essentially a true example of someone who just pushed his luck and refused to back down until he got what he wanted. Unfortunately, he is still exactly the same way. 'Cause why wouldn't he be? Life tends to challenge that type of person until they grow up. Corgan just fought back and somehow won. He genuinely will run the National Wrestling Alliance his way and not care what anyone else thinks. Have you ever read his terrible poetry book? I did. There is no way a proper editor would let all that through. Kurt Cobain, Scott Weiland, Lane Staley, Chris Cornell, Shannon Hoon, and many more great grunge-era frontmen are gone. He is one of maybe 3 left alive, alongside Eddie Vedder and Courtney Love. We should be cherishing all 3, especially since Pearl Jam is still an amazing live act and releases good albums. Instead, while Vedder has become America's ukulele-toting dad and Love has redeemed herself, everyone still dislikes Billy Corgan. I just wrote a gushing eulogy for him, and even I dislike Billy Corgan. Story 21. Rupert Murdoch created an unprecedented media empire and is also responsible for the partial devolution of democracy as we knew it. Story 22. I know this is a very America-centric thread, but some of the greatest football players of all time were real troublemakers. Diego Maradona, George Best, and Cristiano Ronaldo are examples. Others who could have been great include Paul Gascoigne and Mason Greenwood, to name just a few. Story 23. Kanye had some legitimate hits for years. His first 4 to 5 albums are pure gold, but he is an absolute train wreck now. Story 24. DJ Khaled. Everyone says his talent is bringing artists together. All I see is someone who screams his name at the beginning of the songs he produces, gets booed at his live concerts, and clumsily fumbles with Bob Marley's guitar, which is an insult to musicians as a whole. Story 25. It has to be Caravaggio, right? He was an artistic genius with light and shadow, but also a notorious brawler who committed murder. Talk about a complex character. Story 26. Alexander Graham Bell invented the telephone, but he was also a eugenicist who believed deaf people would be better off learning orally. He had sign language banned in schools for a century, and we are still trying to undo the damage he caused. Story 27. I was going to mention Rupert Murdoch, but then I realized how influential he is and that it might not be wise to insult him online. Therefore, I decided not to post it. Better safe than sorry. Story 28. I'm not sure if he counts, but Jeffree Star has had a lot of drama. However, his makeup line is excellent. People do shame me when I mention that I use his products. Story 29. Stanley Kubrick abused Shelley Duvall on the set of The Shining, and I just can't get past it. Story 30. Antonio Brown is an all-time great wide receiver in National Football League history and, in my personal opinion, might be the most purely talented one ever. I have no doubt he would be second all-time in receiving yards right now, ahead of Larry Fitzgerald, with the potential to keep playing and surpass Jerry Rice for first place if he had even moderate intelligence and temperament. However, he is approximately in the 4th percentile in those areas and has crashed and burned his career in a saga unmatched by any other professional athlete. Most of the troubled ones have an incident or two that wrecks their careers, but Brown has a list so extensive it cannot fit into a single comment. Here are some highlights I find most amusing, alongside his worst actions. While he is undeniably a problematic individual, his behavior is so outrageous that it's hard not to find some things to laugh at. He forced his way off the Pittsburgh Steelers when he felt threatened by Juju Smith-Schuster after the 2018 season. At that time, we respected him, recognizing he was a bit of a character with an attitude who had committed a few minor crimes. However, that's not unusual for wide receivers. They are often divas. He refused to be traded to the Buffalo Bills, a big mistake in hindsight. He was traded to the Oakland Raiders. During one offseason, he took a hot air balloon to training camp, suffered frostbite on his feet from a faulty hyperbaric chamber, refused to use a modern helmet, and tried to paint his old helmet a new color to conceal it. He punted a ball at his general manager and asked to be fined for that, which he was, before getting himself released and suing for his bonus money. He joined the New England Patriots for Week 2 after Tom Brady vouched for him, playing only one game before being released when a second rape allegation was made against him. He decided to retire from the NFL and spent his free time throwing gummy worms at police officers, hurling furniture off balconies onto sidewalks where children were walking, firing his personal chef for having a fish head in his freezer, which he mistakenly thought was a death threat, and tweeting, "No more white woman 2020. He joined the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in 2020 after Brady again vouched for him. He won a Super Bowl with the team after serving an 8-game suspension for the previous year's sexual assault allegation. The following season, he received another suspension for submitting a fake COVID-19 vaccination card to the league office and claimed to have been injured in his first game back. In his second game back, he claimed he could no longer play, and his coach told him to go home. He did this dramatically by removing his uniform and throwing it into the stands while dancing shirtless off the field. He was released that same day. After his playing days ended, he attempted to become a franchise owner by buying an Arena League team. He folded the team in 3 months without ever playing a game because he failed to pay any of the team's bills. He removed his pants and exposed himself to a random woman at a hotel pool in Dubai. He was incarcerated for failing to make child support payments. He is currently trying to start a sports media brand known as CTESPN, acknowledging his brain is in poor condition while also filing for bankruptcy 3 years after tweeting a screenshot of his $20 million bank account balance. The man is simply so outrageous and indifferent to others that he is more interesting than any fictional character anyone can imagine. Story 31. James Brown treated his band poorly and enjoyed fining them for imagined slights, such as being flat or coming in late on a musical phrase. Paul Simon is a great pop and soft rock artist, but is reportedly difficult to work with. The Egos have landed. Story 32. I don't care much for basketball or follow it, but my understanding is Kobe was an incredible athlete and an amazing talent in that sport. He was a strong advocate for youth sports and worked to provide opportunities in less wealthy areas, likely changing the lives of tens of thousands of kids. Unfortunately, he was also involved in serious legal issues. Story 33. Dave Navarro has the skills but cannot get along with other band members. He is very egotistical and his fame was over a long time ago. Story 34. Rolf Harris inspired generations of children to engage in art. Discovering that he had been a troubled individual all along was heartbreaking. Story 35. Russell Brand was often commented on for his comedic acting skills and for being in recovery. He is honestly a negative influence. You cannot be clean if you are living in a negative way. Story 36. There are several options to choose from, including Alec Baldwin, R. Kelly, and Jerry Lee Lewis, who was popular a long time ago. I've heard that Christian Bale has a difficult reputation, and Tom Cruise is also well known. This list seems endless. Story 37. Bill Murray is not a nice person. Story 38. Logan Paul is incredibly talented at professional wrestling, with the potential to become a future world champion if he commits to it full-time. He has found a profession where his well-known, confident demeanor and punchable face actually work to his advantage. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.